Encyclopedia of Electronic Medical Terminologies. Part 3. Human Physiology. 10 Skeletal System. 206 Bones, Joints, Tendons, Ligaments and Cartilage, Teeth. Our bodies are supported by the skeletal system, which consists of 206 bones that are connected by tendons, ligaments and cartilage. The skeleton not only helps us move, but it's also involved in the production of blood cells and the storage of calcium. The teeth are also part of the skeletal system, but they aren't considered bones. Skeletal system terminologies. Skeletal system consists of a number of parts. Cranium, lower jaw, humerus, pelvic girdle, pelvis, radius, ulna, femur, tibia, fibula, cervical vertebrae, neck bones, clavicle, collarbone, pectoral girdle, sternum, breastbone, lumbar vertebrae, sacrum, carpals, metacarpals, digits, tarsals, metatarsals, amputation, bone density, bone marrow, caries, cartilage, cast, collarbone, costal, dental, dental caries, flexion, fracture, gingivitis, medulla, osteoplasty, osteoporosis, rickets, rupture, spina bifida, sprain, swelling. 11 Integumentary system. Skin, hair, nails. The skin or integumentary system is the body's largest organ. It protects us from the outside world and is our first defense against bacteria, viruses and other pathogens. Our skin also helps regulate body temperature and eliminate waste through perspiration. In addition to skin, the integumentary system includes hair and nails. Integumentary system. Terminologies. Anatomy. Integumentary system consists of a number of parts. Epidermis, dermis, subcutaneous layer, hair shaft, sweat gland, pore, capillary, dermal papilla, basement membrane, touch receptor, sweat gland duct, acne vulgaris, blister, chicken pox, dander, hair loss, herpes, psoriasis, rash, scabies, smallpox, sunburn, temperature, wheal. 12 Urinary system. 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, bladder, 2 sphincter muscles and the urethra. The urinary system helps eliminate a waste product called urea from the body, which is produced when certain foods are broken down. The whole system includes 2 kidneys, 2 ureters, the bladder, 2 sphincter muscles and the urethra. Urine produced by the kidneys travels down the ureters to the bladder and exits the body through the urethra. Urinary system terminologies. Urinary system consists of a number of parts. Kidney. Kidney produces urine, conserves water, regulates pH, stimulates production of red blood cells, transforms vitamin D into active form. Ureter. Ureter transport urine from kidneys to bladder. Urinary bladder. Urinary bladder stores urine. Urethra. Urethra transports urine from urinary bladder to outside the body. Diaphragm. Adrenal gland. Renal artery. Renal vein. Inferior vena cava. Aorta. Left kidney. Right kidney. Celiac trunk. Suprarenal gland. Cortex. Medulla. Renal papilla. Calyx. Renal pelvis. Renal vein. Renal artery. Superior mesenteric artery. Inferior mesenteric artery. internal iliac artery, common iliac vein, common iliac artery, abdominal aorta, renal hilum, anuria, casuria, hematuria, hemodialysis, hemoglobinuria, incontinence of urine, kidney stones, kidney transplant, milituria, ploria, proturia, renal failure, urea, uremia, urethra, urea, urinary tract infection, urine. Vital organs. Humans have 5 vital organs that are essential for survival. These are the brain, heart, kidneys, liver and lungs. 1. Human brain. The human brain is the body's control center, receiving and sending signals to other organs through the nervous system and through secreted hormones. It is responsible for our thoughts, feelings, memory storage and general perception of the world. 2. Human heart. The human heart is responsible for pumping blood throughout our body. 3. The kidneys. The job of the kidneys is to remove waste and extra fluid from the blood. The kidneys take urea out of the blood and combine it with water and other substances to make urine. 4. The liver. The liver has many functions, including detoxifying of harmful chemicals, breakdown of drugs, filtering of blood, secretion of bile and production of blood clotting proteins. 5. The lungs. The lungs are responsible for removing oxygen from the air we breathe and transferring it to our blood where it can be sent to our cells. The lungs also remove carbon dioxide which we exhale. Facts. The human body contains nearly 100 trillion cells. There are at least 10 times as many bacteria in the human body as cells. The average adult takes over 20,000 breaths a day. Each day the kidneys process about 200 quarts, 50 gallons, of blood to filter out about 2 quarts of waste and water. Adults excrete about 142 liters, of urine each day. The human brain contains about 100 billion nerve cells. Water makes up more than 50% of the average adult's body weight. 2. Cell physiology in details. Cell physiology terminologies. The cell is composed of 1. Cell membrane, 2. Protoplasm, cytoplasm, nucleus, 3. Lysosomes, 4. Paroxysomes, 5. Golgi apparatus, 6. Centrioles, 7. Endoplasmic reticulum, 8. Mitochondria, 9. Microfilaments, 10. Microtubules, organelles. Absorption. Act as receptors. Act mainly. Active. Active particles. Affect far cells. Affecting rate. Affects nearby cells. Against all cells. Allows some substances to pass and prevents others. Alveolar membrane. Amino acids. Amount of substance injected. Anions, vions. Another definition. Another substance. Antipyrine. Antipyring. Applied to any part of the body. Arterial. Attach cells to each other. Attached. Attachment. Autocrine. Autocrine communication. Available. Available volume. Bacteria. Bacteria are transported to the inside of the cell. Barrier. Because there is no carrier. Become. Between. Bilayer. Binding. Binding of the substance. Binds to. Binds to receptor. Blood. Blood vessel. Blood vessels. Blue or albumin labeled. Body fat is relatively free of water. Body water. Body weight. Borders. Bullets. by binding to receptor protein on cell membrane. Called coated pits. Called glycal collects. Called glycal collects. Called hormone. Called neurotransmitter. Capillaries. Capillary wall. Carbohydrates. Carrier. Carrier-mediated. Carrier protein. Carriers. Cations, plus vions. Caused by. Cell glycocalyx. Cells secrete chemical messenger. Cells communicate with each other by sending signals. Change. Channel protein. Channels. Channels running across the intercellular space. Chemical. Chemical gradient. Chemical messenger. Chemical or physical properties of internal environment. Chemical gated. Cholesterol. Circulating fluid through all parts of the body. Closeover. Collecting ducts. Combined with lipids. Glycolipids. Combined with proteins. Glycoproteins. Common carrier. Common carrier. Communication, Compartment is calculated. Compartments. Competitive inhibition. Complete. Composed of. Composition. Concentrated in small pits. Concentration. Concentration gradient. Concerned. Connecting one cell to another. Constitute about 20% of body weight. Constitute about 40% of body weight. Containing. Contains. Content. Continuous layer. Continuously. Contractile. Counter-transport. Coupled with pumping. Criteria. Cytoplasm. Definition. Dehydration. Dehydration develops. Determine. Determine the fluidity of the membrane. Deuterium oxide. Did not exist. Difference in hydrostatic. Differences. Different parts of the body. Diffuse. Diffusible. Diffusible ions. Diffusion. Diffusion of water. Diffusion of water osmosis. Diffusion through. The lipid bilayer. Digestible. Digestion. Digestive secretions. Dilution principle. Direct, electrical, communication. Directly or indirectly. Directly proportional. Directly proper. Dissolved in the phospholipid bilayer. Distance across which diffusion takes place. Distribute. Distribute uniformly. Distributes mechanical trauma. Distribution of ions. Divided into two compartments. Does not increase after that. Does not need. Does not need carrier. Does not readily. Done using indicator. Donen effect. Donen and Gibbs. Down. Each carrier. Easier. Effects of Donen equilibrium. Either. Either. Electrical. Electrical neutrality. Electrical or pressure. Electrochemical. Electrochemical. Endocrine communication. Endocytosis. Energy. Entire surface. Entire surface. Entire surface. Enzymatic reactions. Enzymes. Equal. Equation. Equilibrium. Escape from dangers. Essential component. Essential for homeostatic. Essentially. Exam. Exchange. Exchange of ions. Exchange of nutrients. Excretion. Exocytosis, cell excretion. Expose to. Extend. Extend through the whole thickness. Extracellular fluid, ECF. Facilitated. Facilitated diffusion. Factors. Fatty acids. Fill. filtrate, filtration, fluid. Fluidity makes it more flexible. Fraction. For cellular function. For passage of ions. Form. Free fatty acid, FFA. From area. From cell to cell. Function. Functions. Functions, importance, of body water. Gated channels. Gibbs-Dunning equation. Gibbs-Dunning equilibrium. Globular. Glomerular. Glomerular capillaries. Glomerular filtrate. Glomeruli of the kidney and arterial. Glucose. Glycerol. Gradient. Gradient, grad. Gradient till all the carriers. Has no gate. Head. Hence the name kinetic. High concentrated solution. High kinetic energy. High structural specificity. Higher. Histamine and prostaglandins. Homeostasis. Hormones. Hydrophobic characters. i.e. to keep the internal environment optimum. Inner vesicle. In addition. In most cells. In two aspects. In which the messenger. Increases. Increasing the concentration. Indirect, chemical, communication. Infants and children. Ingested substance. Inhibition. Injected intravenously. Inside. Integral proteins. Intercellular communications. Internal environment. Interstitial. Interstitial fluid. Intestine. Intracellular fluid, ICF. Intracellularly. Intravascular fluid, plasma. Inulin. Invagination. Inversely proportional. Inversely proper. Inwards by action of contractile elements. Ion channels. Ions. Is less in females than males. Is less in obese persons. Is released from postsynaptic neuron passes. Isotopically labeled water. It is present in the water-poor interior of the membrane. It is the process by which a gas or a substance in a solution expands. It is transport of substance across semipermeable membrane down its electrochemical gradient. Kidney. Large area. Large enough. Large molecules. Large particles. Large quantities. Leak channels. Less concentrated. Less sensitive to temperature changes. Less solvent. Ligand-gated. Ligation. Lipid bilayer. Lipid insoluble. Lipid layer. Lipid solubility. Lipid soluble. Lipid soluble substances. Lipids. Loose coat. Low concentrated solution. Lubricant. Lungs. Lysosomes. Macromolecules. Macrophages. Made up of phospholipids. Mainly depolarization. Maintain homeostasis. Maintained at very low level. Monomers. Mannitol. Many of them. Masses floating. Measurement of body water compartments. Mechanical buffer. Shock absorber. Mechanism. Mechanisms. Medium for all secretions to work. Medium for chemical. Medium for exchange process. Medium for most biological processes. Membrane. Membrane transport. Metabolic processes. Mitochondria. Molecular size. Molecular weight. Molecule. Molecules. Monocytes. More commonly. More commonly. More concentrated solution. More sensitive to temperature changes. More solvent. Most amino acids. Most biological systems. Mostly metabolic products. motion. Motive medium in the eye. Movement of water-soluble substances. Moves. Moves from cell to cell. Muscle fibers. Narrow limits. Nearly similar. Needs carrier. Needs energy. Negatively charged. Neural, synaptic, communication. Neuromuscular junction. Neurotrons. Neutrophils, macrophages. No competitive inhibition. No structural specificity. Non-diffusible. Non-diffusible ion. Non-gated channels. Normal variation. Number. Nutrients. Obtain food. Occurs. Occurs in most body cells. Occurs through. One side. Opened. Opposite directions. Or chemical messenger to each other. Osmolarity. Osmosis. Osmotic. Osmotic pressure. Osmotically. Outside or more. Overall negative surface charge. Overall negative surface charge. Paracrine communication. Part of the channel. Particle. Particles. Passive transport. Penetrate capillary membrane. Penetrate the lipid. Peripheral proteins. Peripheral proteins. Peritoneum. Permeability. Permeability of the membrane. Permeation. Permit the rapid propagation of action potential. Phagocytic cell. Phagocytic vesicle. Phagocytosis vesicle, cell eating. Phosphates, PO43. Phospholipids. Pinocytic vesicle. Pinocytosis, cell drinking. Plasma. Plasma volume measured. Pleuropericardium. Postsynaptic, postsyn. Potential. Potential spaces. Predictable way. Presence. Present in cardiac. Present on the outer surface. Preserved on both sides of the membrane. Pressure depends. Pressure gradient. Pressure needed to stop osmosis. Presynaptic, presyn. Primary active transport. Processes as regulation of pH. Produces energy. Proportional, proper. Protein channels. Proteins. Provides. Pumps. Radioactive iodine. Random. Random motion. Rapid. Rather than the size. Ratio. Ratios. Reabsorption. Receptor. Receptor on postsynaptic neuron. Receptors. Redistribute themselves. Regulate temp. Regulates. Regulation of body temperature. Relatively water-soluble, hydrophilic. Release. Remain in vascular system. Remove. Remove some waste products. Renal tubular. Renal tubules. Renal tubules and venous end of capillaries. Result. Same direction. Sarcoplasmic reticulum. Saturated. Saturation. Saturation has a maximum limit. Second half of distal tubules. Secondary. Secondary active transport. Secreted to blood. Semi-permeable. Semi-permeable. Semi-permeable membrane. Separate. Separation. Severe. Showed. Similar molecules. Simple diffusion. Simple diffusion. Skeletal. Skin. Slightly. Small water-soluble substance. Small water substances. Smooth MS. So it becomes less harmful. Sodium amino acids. Sodium glucose. Soluble substances. Solution. Solvent. Solvent drag. Solvent through the membrane. Some enter in immune response. Special types of passive transport. Specific carrier. Specific molecule. Specific receptor on the cell. Square root of the molecular size. Structure. Substance. Substances. Sucrose. Supply. Surface area. Surface of the carrier. Synaptic, cleft. Synaptic cleft. System supply. Systemic. Tail. Takes place. Temperature, temp. The entire pit invaginates. The most common type of communication. The whole thickness. Their concentration products on both sides are equal. There are 2 types of communication. There are 4 types. There will be an additional step. They act as thickness. Thickness of the membrane. Thiocyanate. Thiosulfate. Through heat distribution and evaporation. Through kidney and skin, sweat. Through which ions continuously leak. Tissue macrophages. To affect other cells. Total body water, TBW. Transport. Transport medium. Transport of substances. Tritium oxide. Tubular lumen. Tubules. Types of active transport. Types of channels. Types of diffusion. Uphill. Urea. Variation with age. Variation with fat content in body. Variation with sex. Vesicle digest. Vesicle formation. Via gap junctions. Vitamins. Voltage. Voltage-gated channels. Volume, water content. Volume of compartment. Waste products. Water constitutes about 60% of body weight. Water mix. Water present inside or outside the cell. White blood cells. Widening of the inner. With increasing. Without entering. Without limit, no carrier. 3. Blood in details. Blood terminologies. Blood. Physical properties. Color. Arterial blood is bright red in color due to presence of oxyhemoglobin. Venous blood is dark, or bluish, red in color due to presence of reduced hemoglobin. Specific gravity. 1090 for blood cells. 1030 for plasma. 1060 for whole blood. Specific gravity for water equals 1000. Viscosity. It is a physical property by means of which fluid resist any change in their shape. Viscosity of water equals 1, that of plasma 2, and viscosity of whole blood equals 4. It is mainly due to red blood cells and plasma proteins, mainly fibrinogen. Blood viscosity is important for the peripheral resistance which is necessary for maintaining normal arterial blood pressure. Osmotic pressure. About 5000 Hg. It is mainly due to crystalloids. The colloid osmotic pressure. Plasma protein. Albumin. General functions. 1. Transport function. Blood transports 1 O2 and CO2. 2. Digested absorbed food. 3. Waste products. 4. Active substances as vitamins and hormones. 2. Defensive function. White blood cells attack the invading pathogenic organisms and produce antibodies against them. 3. Hemostatic function. When a blood vessel is injured, blood loss is prevented by the formation of platelet plug and blood clot. 4. Homeostatic function. Blood helps to maintain the composition of the interstitial fluid, internal environment, constant. Composition. Blood is a modified connective tissue composed of 1. Cellular component, 45%. 1 red blood corpuscles, RBCs, or erythrocyte. 2 white blood corpuscles, WBCs, or leukocytes. 3 platelets or thrombocytes. 2. Fluid component, plasma 55% composed of A. Water 90%. B. Dissolved substances 10%. 1 plasma proteins. 2 other organic substances as nutrients and waste products. 3 inorganic substances. Packed cell volume, hematocrit. It is the percentage ratio of RBCS volume to total blood volume equals 45%. Total blood volume of an adult male is nearly 5 liters, about 8% of body weight. Plasma proteins. Plasma 55%. RBCS 45%. Concentration. Average. Composition, types. Concentration. Albumin. Globulin. Divided into fibrinogen. Prothrombin. Site of formation. Synthesis. Fibrinogen. Prothrombin and the most of the globulins. Alpha and beta globulins are formed in liver. Gamma globulins. Globulins formed by plasma cells present in the lymphoid tissue in the body, in lymph nodes, liver, spleen, bone marrow. Functions. Specific functions, i.e. related to a specific type of plasma proteins. 1. Osmotic pressure of plasma. Albumin is responsible for most, 80%, of this osmotic pressure. Because it has the highest concentration and smallest molecular size, i.e. great number of molecules. The total osmotic pressure of plasma equals 5000 mHg. It is due to crystalloids and colloids, plasma proteins. The crystalloid are more powerful, responsible for most of plasma osmotic pressure, but less important regarding movement of fluid across the capillary wall. This is because crystalloids are present in plasma and tissue fluid in the same concentration, so their net osmotic effect is zero. The colloids, plasma proteins, are less powerful, responsible only for 25–30 mHg of the plasma osmotic pressure, but more important because plasma proteins are present only in plasma. Tissue fluid is almost free of proteins, so some fluid is reabsorbed from tissue fluid to the plasma by the osmotic pressure of plasma proteins. Crystalloids equal to plasma. Tissue fluid. 2. Defensive functions. Gamma globulins are the antibodies that protect the body against the microorganisms and their toxins. 3. Viscosity of the plasma. Fibrinogen is the main plasma proteins responsible for it because of its elongated molecules and large molecular weight. Viscosity is important for maintaining the blood pressure. 4. Clotting of blood is the function of fibrinogen and prothrombin B non-specific functions. 5. Buffering function. Buffer system is composed of weak acid and its salt with a strong base. At normal pH of blood, 7–4 slightly alkaline. Plasma proteins are present in the form of proteinic acid, weak acid, salt with a strong base. Thus it acts as a buffer system preventing excessive changes in pH. E.g. lactic acid, relatively strong, proteinic acid, weak acid. Strong alkali. Proteinic acid. 6. Carrier function. Plasma proteins acts as carriers for many substances. 1. Vitamins e.g. vitamin A. 2. Hormones e.g. thyroxine and insulin. 3. Metals e.g. iron and Cu. 4. Ions e.g. calcium. Significance of this carrier function. 1. The combined form acts as a reservoir from which the free substance is slowly released to tissues. To prevent filtration of substances in the kidney and loss in urine. 7. Regulation of capillary permeability. The pores in the capillary walls are partially blocked by plasma proteins. Thus decreased plasma proteins is associated with increased capillary permeability. 8. Protein reserve. Plasma proteins acts as a reserve protein used during starvation to supply the tissues with amino acids needed for protein synthesis. Albumin. Ratio of albumin to globulin in plasma. Normally it is from 1:1 to 1:8. It decreases in cases of decreased albumin or increased globulin. Decreased albumin results from 1. Decrease intake as in malnutrition and malabsorption. 2. Decrease synthesis as in liver diseases. 3. Increase loss as in A. Kidney disease, K. Loss in urine. B. Severe burns, loss from skin. 4. Increase catabolism as in fevers and trauma including surgery. Increased globulin occur in 1. Chronic inflammation as chronic hepatitis. 2. Some collagen diseases as rheumatoid arthritis both lead to increased immunoglobulins. Red blood corpuscles, RBCs, erythrocyte. 5 million, 3 in adult males. 4-5 million, 3 in adult females. More in newly born infants. Shape circular biconcave. Non-nucleated discs. This characteristic shape, biconcavity. 1. Increases the surface area in relation to volume. 2. Enables it to pass through narrow capillaries without rupturing during deformation. Size 90 cubic microns in volume, 75 microns in diameter. Origin, site of formation. In fetus RBCs are formed in the liver and spleen. In children RBCs are formed in bone marrow of all bones. In adults, by age of 20, RBCs are formed in bone marrow of membranous bones, flat bones, e.g. sternum, ribs, skull and vertebrae. This is called red or active bone marrow, while bone marrow of long bones in adults becomes fatty and is called yellow or inactive bone marrow. Production, genesis, of RBCs, erythropoiesis, pluripotent hematopoietic stem cell, uncommitted stem cell, in bone marrow. Stimulated by erythropoietin. Proerythroblast. Basophil. Erythroblast, early normoblast. Polycratophil. Intermediate normoblast. Orthochromatic. Reticulocyte. Remnants of Golgi apoptose and mitochondria. Short lifespan of reticulocyte. They constitute only about 1% of RBCs in normal blood. The whole maturation process takes about 5 days. Lifespan 120 days plus minus 7 days. Factors affecting erythropoiesis. 1. Oxygen supply to tissues. Oxygen transport is the primary function of RBCs. Thus the primary stimulus for erythropoiesis is the decreased oxygen supply to tissues, i.e. hypoxia. Mechanism. Hypoxia stimulates secretion of erythropoietin hormone mainly from the kidney, 90%, and also from liver, 10%. Erythropoietin stimulate erythropoiesis in the bone marrow. It mainly stimulate the production of proerythroblasts from the hemopoietic stem cell, but also stimulate the other stages of erythropoiesis. Erythropoietin is glycoprotein in nature and is inactivated in liver. Liver. Hypoxia. Erythropoietin. Bone marrow. 2. Hormones. 1. Androgens, e.g. testosterone. Erythropoiesis through a direct effect on bone marrow. B. Indirect effect through stimulation of erythropoietin release. Two thyroid hormones, T3 and T4, stimulate the metabolism of all body cells including the bone marrow. Hypothyroidism is associated with anemia while hyperthyroidism is associated with polycythemia. 3 glucocorticoids e.g. cortisone stimulate the general metabolism of all cells including the bone marrow. 3. Diet. 1. Proteins needed for formation of globin, part of hemoglobin. 2. Vitamins, especially vitamin B12, cyanocobalamin, and folic acid. They are needed for RBCS maturation factors, because both of them are essential for synthesis of DNA. Deficiency of these factors lead to failure of nuclear maturation and cell division. 3. Metals. A iron in the ferrous state is needed for the formation of Hem, part of hemoglobin. B. Copper acts as a catalyst in hemoglobin formation. C. Cobalt stimulate erythropoiesis by stimulating erythropoietin release. 4. Organs. 1. Liver, essential for normal erythropoiesis because it helps in formation of globin, part of hemoglobin. B. Stores iron, copper, and vitamin B12. C. Synthesizes erythropoietin. 2. Bone marrow. It is the only site in adults for normal erythropoiesis. 3. Kidney synthesizes erythropoietin. Function of RBCS. 1. Function of membrane to enclose hemoglobin. If hemoglobin is free in the plasma, it will lead to many disorders that will be discussed with incompatible blood transfusion. 2. Function of contents. A. Hemoglobin. 1. Carry O2 and CO2. 2. Strong buffer system. B. Carbonic anhydrase enzyme catalyze the reaction between CO2 and H2O. Hemoglobin content 15 grams/100 ml blood in adults, on average, 16 gm/100 ml blood in adult males and 14 gm in adult females. Structure. Each hemoglobin molecule consists of 4 subunits. Each subunit is composed of a heme group attached to a polypeptide chain of amino acids. Heme group is composed of iron protoporphyrin. Al heme group. Subunits. Polypeptide chain. Hemoglobin subunit. HB molecule. 4 polypeptide chains plus 4 heme groups.